While you were worrying about your energy bills, your food shop, and whether you could still afford a holiday, some of Britain's biggest food brands were having a very different experience. They saw the same headlines you did, and rather than absorbing any of that pressure, they piggybacked on it. Smaller packs, cheaper ingredients, and higher prices, all while convincing you that we're all in it together. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the dairy aisle. We're looking at 3 popular butter brands that are all about the bottom line, 4 that are staying a little more honest, and the thing you can do to hold them accountable, because some of Britain's biggest butter brands are now selling products that are nearly 50% vegetable oil. We still call it butter, they still put happy cows on the packaging, and they're charging prices that would make your grandparents choke on their tea. This trend of reformulation isn't new. The cost of living crisis didn't create this problem. It just gave them cover to accelerate it. Because manufacturers have been quietly diluting your butter since the moment refrigeration became standard in British homes. Butter got harder in the fridge, they spotted an opportunity, and vegetable oils started filling the space where butter used to be. Interestingly, those same oils spent years being marketed as the healthier alternative to butter. Whether that's true is a conversation for another day. What isn't up for debate is that they're significantly cheaper to produce. Less of the expensive ingredient, more of the cheap one. Higher price, better margin. The question we should ask is not how we got here, it's where is this going? Because this trend shows no sign of slowing down. If 50% butter is acceptable, why not 40? Why not 30? How far is too far? We already have 100% vegetable oil spreads that are marketed as more premium than the real stuff, despite costing a fraction to produce. So will 100% vegetable oil butter be the standard in 20 years' time? Welcome back to Consumer Watch. I'm JC, dad, consumer, and a man who probably eats far too many vegetable oils. Last time we looked at chocolate. Today we're auditing the dairy aisle to find the biggest rip-off butter brands and a few hidden gems you might want to consider on your next shop. Number 1 is Lurpak. Because this one genuinely winds me up. Lurpak has spent decades positioning itself as the premium option, the quality option, the butter you buy when you're feeling slightly fancy and don't want the supermarket own brand equivalent. But what exactly are you paying for? Rapeseed oil, water, cheaper ingredients. Now, before anyone accuses me of being anti-business, let's be clear. There's nothing wrong with profit. Profit drives innovation. Competition drives better products. That's how healthy markets are supposed to work. The problem starts when products become cheaper to make while becoming more expensive to buy. Because at that point, you're not creating value in the economy, you're extracting it. That's the pattern we're tracking on this channel. Less value for consumers, more margin for shareholders. Before the cost of living crisis, a typical 500-gram tub sold for around £3.35. Today, prices around £5.25 aren't unusual. At the same time, many manufacturers have moved from 500-gram packs to 400-gram packs. Less butter, smaller packs, higher prices. Think about how ridiculous that is for a second. A product containing less butter than it once did became expensive enough that supermarkets started putting anti-theft devices on it. And yet, most consumers still believe they're buying essentially the same thing. Now, to be fair, Lurpak would argue that consumers want spreadability. And they're right. Nobody enjoys turning a piece of toast into crumbs because they've attacked it with fridge-cold butter. Convenience has value. The problem isn't that these products exist. The problem is pretending they're exactly the same thing as they once were. And Lurpak isn't alone. Next up is Anchor, a brand that's fascinating because it has built its entire identity around tradition. Every advert is rolling green fields, happy cows, and fresh grass. Everything about the branding screams heritage, authenticity, and old-fashioned dairy farming. The message is clear. This is butter the way it used to be. The problem is that when you actually turn the pack around and read what's inside, the reality looks rather different. Anchor Spreadable contains roughly 50% butter. Yet again, the rest is largely vegetable oils, water, and salt. So while the front of the packaging is selling you a story about traditional dairy farming, the ingredients are telling a rather different story. In 2019, Anchor took things a step further and launched Squeezy Butter. Yes, Squeezy Butter. Butter in a bottle. Apparently, somebody sat in a meeting room and concluded that Britain's greatest challenge was the fact that butter wasn't enough like ketchup. The product contained so much oil that it could be squeezed through a nozzle, which raises a fairly obvious question. At what point does butter stop being butter and become something else entirely? Fortunately, consumers spotted the absurdity almost immediately. Social media absolutely hammered it. People mocked it relentlessly. Before long, it quietly disappeared from supermarket shelves and most people forgot it ever existed. But there's actually an important lesson hidden in that story. Consumers aren't powerless. When enough people reject a bad product, companies notice very quickly. Sales matter, market share matters, consumer behavior matters. But this only happens when things move quickly, like in this case. The slow march over time just breeds apathy, if it's noticed at all. This brings us to Kerrygold. And this one hurts because Kerrygold's actual block butter is genuinely excellent. Rich, creamy and distinctive. The sort of product that reminds you what butter is supposed to taste like, which makes the spreadable version all the more disappointing. Because once again, consumers think they're buying a softer version of Kerrygold butter when they're actually buying a product that's been blended with oil and other ingredients. But what really caught my attention was the color. That rich golden yellow appearance is one of Kerrygold's biggest selling points. Consumers see that color and immediately think premium butter.
This is why I buy Kerrygold. Not only is the color rich and yellow compared to the other store-bought brand.
So when some of the butter gets replaced, the color needs to stay the same, which is why beta-carotene gets added to maintain that familiar golden look. Think about that for a second. They didn't just dilute the main ingredient, they added color to make sure it still looked like the original. And this isn't the only surprising thing I've learned about the brand. In the US, Kerrygold faced legal action over its grass-fed marketing. It emerged that Irish cows receive supplemental grain feed for part of their diet, and separately, a lawsuit alleged that the famous foil packaging contained PFAS, synthetic forever chemicals, sitting rather awkwardly alongside the pure Irish butter label. Both cases were ultimately resolved without findings against Kerrygold. The UK has no equivalent regulations on PFAS in food packaging yet, so there's been no similar action here. But it's worth knowing, because the product on the shelves in Tesco is the same product that prompted those questions in the first place. This points us back to the reason for this channel. It's not a channel about product reformulations, shrinkflation, and rising prices. There is a much bigger story of corporations cutting corners and making decisions solely on what will drive net revenue in the current quarter. And to keep the baying masses from the door, the psychologists and marketers work overtime to make sure you don't notice. The changes aren't immediately noticeable. They are usually small enough to avoid headlines. It's one recipe change this year, one pack size reduction next year, one price increase the year after that. Nothing dramatic enough to trigger outrage, just enough to slowly extract more value, year after year. Before we move on to the 4 brands I've seen that are bucking this trend, there's one more tactic I think you should be looking out for. Premium branding. This is the sleight of hand trick where corporations give you back what they have taken away and charge you more for the privilege under the guise of improvement. Taste the difference. Finest. Extra special, whatever they're calling it this year. You've seen them all. The packaging gets darker, the fonts get fancier. Maybe there's a gold stripe, maybe there's a farmhouse, maybe there's a picture of a smiling farmer staring thoughtfully into the middle distance. You're paying 20 or 30% more than the standard version, but when you actually compare ingredients, the differences are often surprisingly small. Because every pound you spend ultimately pays for something, and you get to choose. Better ingredients, better farming, better quality, or bigger marketing budgets, better branding, and higher margins. The challenge as consumers is figuring out which one we're actually paying for. One great example of a good honest product is President French Spreadable. The French don't add vegetable oil to make butter spreadable. They add cream. It's still 100% dairy, it's widely available, and it costs about the same as Lurpak. Turns out you don't need a chemistry lab, just better technique. Next, I found M&S Softer Butter. Only 2 ingredients, butter and salt. M&S achieved the spreadability through mechanical churning rather than diluting with oil. They just worked harder at the dairy end, so they didn't have to cut corners at the ingredients end. Revolutionary concept. Number 3 on my list is Graham's Scottish Butter, a family-owned Scottish dairy that explicitly guarantees no palm oil and no vegetable oil, using fresh whipped cream instead. When a brand puts that promise front and center rather than burying the ingredients in small print, that's a company that actually wants you to read the label. Finally, another great spreadable option, Golden Cow 100% Butter Spreadable. Quietly does exactly what it says. No marketing budget spent convincing you it's premium, no heritage farmhouse imagery, just a product that lists its ingredients without embarrassment, which in 2026 is apparently a distinguishing feature. The surprising conclusion to all this buttery madness is this: you don't necessarily need to spend more money to get a better product. Many of these pure dairy options cost roughly the same as the other brands we've discussed today. The difference is where the money goes, and that's really what this channel is about. Not butter, not chocolate, not breakfast cereal. It's about understanding how to spot when a business is trying to rip you off. If you've got this far in the video, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is a huge step for me and the start of something I've wanted to do for a long time. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Doing this will push this out to other British consumers and will give me a huge boost and spurs me on to keep researching, learning, and growing. Let me know in the comments what the biggest consumer downgrade you've noticed recently is, which product has quietly become worse while getting more expensive, and which aisle should we audit next. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and remember to look at the label next time you're shopping.